I would like to talk about my favorite or least favorite trust fund baby. Meghan McCain is maybe the most useless person on planet Earth. She is not intelligent. She has limited broadcast talent. She is purely the product of American nepotism. And she is sort of the millennial version at times of this thing that a certain type of centrist or a certain type of liberal gets fixated on, which is, of course, the reasonable Republican or the good Republican and all of this fantasy nonsense. And what has been proven over and over again are basically there's three versions of this scenario. One is you're Mitt Romney and you give a great speech about how Trump will lead to trickle-down racism and it's so horrible and blah, blah, blah. And then a couple months later, you're there getting cucked at a midtown eatery or nice restaurant because you're trying to get Secretary of State, or you're Jeff Flake and none of your moral hand-wringing has anything to do with voting to stop Brett Kavanaugh from getting on the Supreme Court, as an example.
Jeff, don't ask me or what Flake.
Exactly. Or, the second step is you've built a whole career. If you're Rick Wilson or David Frum, and there's this never-ending appetite, apparently, amongst a certain part of the kind of like bougie, centrist, relatively politically illiterate readership for you to castigate Trump for being a jerk while essentially you share a lot of the same policies as him. And you helped get us to the predicament and the crisis we're in. Or you just were involved in electing any number of ghouls and zombies and gangsters to public office. Or you were a prime advocate of a global war and torture regime. Or the third option, which almost never, ever happens, but you become like a guy, Kevin Phillips, who is, I don't even know if he's still alive, but he was a Nixon advisor and still a very questionable figure in a lot of ways. But by the time you got to the Bush era, he was writing books on why the Republican Party was essentially just purely enthralled to Wall Street and big business, and also the Democrats. And he had a kind of broader populist critique, which is to say he wasn't a Republican anymore. Okay, so there's three scenarios here. There's irrelevant hand-wringing nonsense. There's the I don't like Trump because he's uncouth, but I support laying waste to the world and stealing people's money, and I'm generally useless. And the only people that I have any sway over are mediocre centrists and liberals, because no actual conservative would ever listen to a David Frum, as an example. And then there's the third option, which is that you're actually like, wait a second, I'm not an asshole anymore, and I'm out of here. And even that former Bush lawyer who ran for Senate in Minnesota, I wouldn't have voted for him, but okay, I'll give him credit. He was like, I'm a Democrat. And by the way, we need to protect the environment. Now I support Medicare for all. Fair enough. Meghan McCain, a lot of people have tried to slot in that second category. And she had that embarrassing moment that made the rounds during her dad's funeral where she was like, okay, it was like already great. Like, okay. And it was uncomfortable and weird to watch, but of course it made the rounds of people who tweet and gram that sort of lame-ass thing. And here is Meghan McCain with the best contribution she's ever made to public life, being really clear about where her primary allegiances lie on The View.
The serious lesson for Democrats also is that Republicans are not going to vote against their own agenda and against their own interests, meaning I think there's an impression sometimes, if you don't watch Fox News, that all Republicans, if you're against Trump or you have issues with his rhetoric, that automatically I have somehow morphed into a liberal, that every ideology and principle I have ever agreed on, that the principles that make me who I am, the conservative that I am, have flown out the window. And all of a sudden, I'm a Democrat. That is not the case. Republicans are going to vote for their own agenda, and they did a lot last night, especially in Senate and gubernatorial races. And I think the Democrats that were really competitive were the ones that were more moderate. So that is a lesson I would take away.
That was disappointing to me, actually, because when you look at the Republicans...
Of course it's disappointing. You're a Democrat.
Well,
it's not disappointing for me. I'm a Republican. I'm going to end up voting for the Republicans. And there's a way to differentiate Trump from candidates.
It was disappointing.
No, actually, in substance, there isn't. And I think obviously Meghan's not intelligent enough to realize that, but she actually just articulated that precisely herself. And what is her agenda? She's literally a trust fund baby who's been handed wealth and a career from inception. And she is going to vote to give herself more of that and protect what was already given to her. And she lives in New York, and her dad probably occasionally was like, it was a bad call to vote against making MLK Jr. Day a holiday, and I should have when I had a chance when I was running for president in South Carolina in 2000. I shouldn't have cucked out. I should have said, obviously, the Confederate flag is a symbol of racism. And incidentally, even though I still vote against marriage equality and so on, we've got some gay friends around because we're essentially multi-millionaire entertainment family. But when it actually comes down to things, well, Daddy was about endless wars, invading the planet and, killing plenty of people in the Middle East and saber rattling in Eastern Europe and deterring China. And daughter is into getting money given to her so that she can have even more luck in her entirely unearned career. I mean, honestly, like, you could read Thomas Piketty or you could look at Meghan McCain, and the lesson about intergenerational wealth and how it sclerotifies society is there. I mean, this is somebody, if this was the daughter of a Kmart manager, this is not somebody who's rising to the top of a meritocracy. This is pure mediocrity through contacts. And she's going to vote to give herself shit. And that is the Republican, at least the wealthy part of who votes for Republicans, who actually get policy rewarded. And if she has to look the other way on white nationalism and homophobia and all the other stuff, she will, even as she continues to listen to Lorde and have gay friends or whatever the fuck else it is that people think make this wretched human being moderate.
I wonder if she signed a contract extension recently or something like that, because it's very rare that the Never Trumpers will be like, yeah, I'm not going to work with you guys.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not really your ally. Yeah, this Trump stuff, I'll feign outrage, but fundamentally, I'm not going to change any of my behavior.
Right, that's true. But she's also getting a good job at, the anxiety and the temper tantrum she had about socialism a couple of months ago. She has there is something very the pores are coming from across town.
Oh, yeah.
She's the smelling salts are out. And I think it's different when, Daddy says Hillary will be okay. Right? Now it's oh my God, they're actually voting for people that might mean that I won't inherit 6 houses. This might mean that I might not have just a completely unearned decadent lifestyle. And that is a problem. That terrifies me.
And
she said, that terrifies me.
And
these ideas are being normalized.
Whether people like Meghan McCain are conscious of that or not, I think it definitely registers. You can tell the stream is going to dry up, even if you're not really sure that's why you're supporting this. I mean, I think that Meghan McCain knows, but generally when people it's a mystery because why they're voting for Republicans, because they're socially this or that, right? It's the money.
They don't care. That's all that shit is secondary to irrelevant. And I also